Hi there, I'm Tom Wentworth, and today I'm going to teach you how to transition from enterprise sales to product-led growth. When I was putting together the content for this presentation a few days ago, I saw this tweet from Brian Halligan, the CEO and founder of HubSpot, and it really reflected the story I want to tell today, which is that it's less and less about what you sell, and it's more and more about how you sell. And with that in mind, another story, I'm in the market for a new car. Some might call it a midlife crisis car, but I really like the idea of a Jeep Wrangler in particular, something like what we see on the screen here. But of course, in doing my research, I looked at more than just Jeep Wranglers. In particular, I looked at Tesla, big Elon Musk fan, and I saw this tweet: order a Tesla without a test drive and you get 3 days to return for a refund. And if you think about the automobile industry, right, one of the worst investments you could make is buying a new car, because the minute you drive it off of a lot, it's depreciated by a substantial amount, I think 10% or so, right? But here's Elon Musk and Tesla so confident in the experience that they're going to deliver you that they're going to give you 3 days to buy this car. And if you don't like it, here, we'll take it back, no questions asked. It's a really interesting idea from Tesla. I also, and if you think about it, are we really that far from maybe a world where we go to the Tesla's website and just like we see with SaaS products that we use today, we just put in our email address, click the free trial button, and Tesla ships us our 3 day free trial of our Model 3 or Model S. It's a fascinating concept. I also took a look at Volvo. My wife drives a Volvo, and Volvo has done something really interesting with subscriptions. You could think of potentially a subscription the same way you think of a lease, but Volvo's done it a little bit differently. For one all-inclusive price, you get to rent the car, you get insurance, and you get maintenance all covered with a single price. And maybe even more interestingly, you can opt out of the subscription after a year, right? So you can change your car. And this got me thinking, well, wow, that sounds a lot like the SaaS applications in the world that I live in, right? Here's Box's subscription plan. So when I started thinking about this presentation and my auto research experience, it's interesting. There really is no more distinction between B2B and B2C. Best practices that have worked in B2B are now being used by people like Tesla and Volvo, and vice versa. And in fact, I think that companies and brands who are embracing this change are the ones that are winning, right? Tesla is, maybe the best example. And when we talk about differentiating, classically, the way that we differentiate with product, right? Whoever builds the best product win. And of course, I don't think that's true anymore. It's really hard to differentiate with product in a world where there's infinite supply. You can differentiate with price, and this works to some extent. Apple has differentiated with price for quite some time with the iPhone, but as we've seen, that has consequences. And over time, differentiating with price at either the low end or high end of the market is difficult. One of the more sort of modern ways people have been talking about differentiation is a brand. This is, my friends at Drift talk a lot about this, and potentially brand is really the only way that you differentiate. And I certainly think this is something that lots of companies are obviously successful with. But there's something else I think that's maybe even a more important way to differentiate these days, and that's differentiating with a business model. And I think that's what we saw earlier with the Tesla example. I think we saw it. It's what Volvo's trying to do. It's what Brian Halligan talked about in the first slide of this presentation. And that's really the RapidMiner story. So as I talk to you today about how we transition from enterprise sales to product-led growth, it's really a story of business model differentiation. So just a little bit about RapidMiner. We're a data science platform. We're used by large enterprises to empower their analytics team with a platform that lets them build predictive models that are used for all sorts of things, ranging from customer analytics to predictive maintenance to fraud and money laundering detection. We're an open source products. We have over 450,000 users, 30,000 organizations use the product, 4,000 universities, which will be really important in a few slides, and over 300 clients. And we're a recognized leader by Gartner and Forrester and all that. So just a little perspective on RapidMiner before we get into the meat of the story. And some history. So RapidMiner, as I mentioned, is an open source product started initially back in 2001 through our founder, Dr. Ingo Mierswa, and his PhD research thesis. Ingo, in his work in the early days, was a data scientist before we used the word data science. Back then, we called it statistics and math. And as a part of his work as a practicing data scientist, he built a framework that he called Yet Another Learning Environment, open sourced that framework, and a few years later renamed that framework Yale to RapidMiner. And then a few years after that, founded the company RapidMiner with a Series A. RapidMiner was founded in Germany, which is where Ingo went to school. With our Series B, which we raised in 2014, we moved to the US. And with our Series C, which is a very common thing to say, we raised our Series C in late 2015 to expand enterprise sales and marketing, which really means we took a Series C to invest in growth. That's also the time that I joined RapidMiner as the Chief Marketing Officer. So I joined in late 2015, and my charter was, as RapidMiner had raised the Series C, it was time for us to really build out an enterprise go-to-market, which is something that I had done a couple of times in my career. So I walked into an organization that had already built out its enterprise field sales team, which was a new investment in anticipation of the Series C. The existing sales organization was really more focused on mid-market. And if you just look at the structures, we had a pretty typical enterprise sales organization. We had AEs supported by SDRs. We had hired a relationship-oriented sales team. There's sort of two big segmentations of sales reps, in my opinion. You have those that are more relationship-oriented, those that are more product-oriented. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, and we had both in our team. Our enterprise team was targeted at high-value use cases, which I'll share in a second, while our mid-market team was focused on just very horizontal applications of data science and machine learning. Our enterprise team was deploying the challenger sale methodology, which is really about opening up the prospect's eyes to outcomes they may not have thought about yet, while our inside team was really focused just on following up with the people that are using the free version of our product, which means that our enterprise team was outbound, our mid-market team was inbound. So this is what I walked into as the CMO in late 2015. And we were focused on, and my charter in particular, was really focused on helping the organization make progress in a couple of key verticals. We had targeted 8, but there's really 3 or 4 that had the biggest focus from my perspective. Manufacturing, those who manufacture products, predictive analytics and data science is really important for predictive maintenance. Energy companies, something we focus a lot on, financial services for anti-money laundering and financial fraud, those sorts of things. So we really focused on my focus, helping the enterprise organization build pipeline in these key verticals. So when you hand over, you hire a new CMO with $15 million of fresh Series C venture capital, you know what's going to happen. I'm going to spend that money, and I did. So when I came on board, we invested in some big events. We ran some ABM pilot programs. We did all the things that you would do as a CMO chartered with investing and building and helping the enterprise sales team build out pipeline. But after 2 quarters of my time at RapidMiner, we had seen some positive signals. Pipeline was going way up. Our mid-market team was chugging along, doing what they were doing very effectively. But we found that we were getting ourselves lots of opportunities and in big opportunities and big target accounts, but we hadn't seen those opportunities convert yet. And in fact, when we looked closer at the opportunities that we had gotten ourselves into, we realized that what was really happening for us is that we were getting into these opportunities at the top where we were targeting. We were going into the head of analytics or the head of a specific line of business. But 7, 8, 9 months later, we found ourselves in a sort of proof of concept bake-off back with the people that our mid-market team had been working with, which are the people using our product. So while we found ourselves able to get into these opportunities, we were creating pipeline, but unfortunately not creating ACV at the level that we were hoping for with that enterprise sales model. And in hindsight, I found this tweet storm. I'm usually not a fan of tweet storms. There's only a few people that have earned the right to tweet storm me. One of them is Martin Casado, who's a partner at Andreessen Horowitz. And I saw this like a few weeks ago, and it captured exactly what we struggled with at the time. I wish I had seen this because we probably could have made some smarter business decisions. But in hindsight, what we were trying to do in building both a enterprise sales organization in combination with a bottoms up product oriented model was just really hard. It was obviously something that we believe pretty strongly in. We saw the opportunity, but I think we underestimated the complexity for a relatively small startup to be able to do both effectively. And what we found was that in some ways we were becoming two different companies. We had this effective engine that was focused on converting the users of our free product, of our open source product, and that was working well. And as we built out this enterprise team, it was an entirely different selling motion with an entirely different value proposition, an entirely different sales methodology in our challenger sale. And it required really building two companies within one startup. And as we started to take a step back and really introspect what was happening, we determined that there's no way that we were going to be able to make both work, and that we really had to nail our bottoms up motion. This is something that Martin, of course, recommends at the end of his tweet storm, that you need to figure out that bottoms up motion and make sure that bottoms up motion supports the outcomes you're trying to achieve, which in our case was still around targeting specific user personas in specific verticals. So when we took a step back and looked at what we have and what was working, the thing that was really working the most, or the things that working the most, were first that users love RapidMiner. Before I joined, we had an NPS survey, sort of an automated process put in place. It turns out no one had been looking at it for quite some time, and I discovered it almost accidentally. But we'd been sending out emails to product users at a regular interval and getting amazing feedback. At the time I looked at it, overall blended, we had a 68 NPS, which is world class. And if you took a segment of that, the more people used our product, that NPS went even higher. So it's an amazing asset. The users that were using our product loved it. We also had awareness. Obviously one of the challenges as the CMO is, making sure that people understand that you play in a market, what market you play in, and they know about you. And Katie Nuggets, who is a very popular media resource among the data science community, every year they do an annual survey of which tools are being used by data scientists in that market. And we do very well. We're the most popular general purpose data science platform. And if you add up all of our competitors, or our typical competitors together, they have less awareness than we have. So certainly we didn't have an awareness problem. We also didn't have a user acquisition problem. So looking back, in early February, which is the time frame we were having these thoughts, we were seeing 13, 14, 15% month over month user growth with absolutely no paid user acquisition, 100% organic. Our marketing dollars were going towards more of these enterprise events, enterprise demand gen activities, but our organic funnel was growing on its own. So at that same time, if you look at the time, I highlighted it here in about April of 2016, I also started to see a lot of thought leadership from HubSpot around this idea of a PQL. Why product qualified leads are failing freemium model. Our freemium model wasn't failing, but this idea of a PQL was really interesting to me as the way that HubSpot described it, which is that you should focus on getting your product in front of as many people as possible. And by doing that, you'll see conversion rates that you're not going to see with traditional marketing tactics. Okay, I buy that. So at this time, we sort of put a pause in the organization. We had seen, we'd seen some traction with pipeline creation. We had, gotten ourselves into a bunch of opportunities. We hadn't closed them yet, but we sort of took a step back and said, really, where are we as an organization, and where do we want to be, and where's the best place for us to go forward from here? And we put together a project. This was a cross-functional project, across the entire organization. Of course, we had our sales team focus on closing deals and bringing in revenue, but across everyone else, we put this project together called Project Epsilon Next. And our objective was, how do we scale faster with this bottoms-up product-led growth mentality that we had been inspired by in looking at some of the content from HubSpot. This activity led us to form 3 major groups in the organization. So we ran a sprint process. We broke this out into 3 teams. We ran 3 sprints over 3 months, focused on 3 areas. How do we improve user retention? So how do we, so the funnel that is organically growing, how do we make sure that more of those users continue to use our product day after day, week after week, month after month? The second thing we focused on was how do we make money? How do we improve conversion of our free to paid, which anyone who's worked in an open source business will understand the challenges behind that. And then lastly, we put a sprint group together about how do we improve our dollar retention rate, which obviously translates to renewals and upsells. So 3 sets of sprints over a 3-month period, which led us to make some pretty radical changes in the business. So we realized first that to build a bottoms-up, product-oriented sales go-to-market, we had to look at our account executives and we had to match their skill sets to the reality of that model. So as I mentioned, we had a lot of sales members who were relationship-oriented, and that just wasn't going to work in a product-oriented bottoms-up model. So we restructured the sales team around our account execs who had really strong product-oriented skills, yet we still decided to retain our focus on high-value use cases. So we still wanted our AEs to focus on those inbound leads that were in those 8 verticals we talked about earlier. We hired a customer success team, or we built a customer success team. At the time, we hadn't had one, and of course, that is clearly a best practice among recurring revenue companies. In the marketing group, of course, which I ran, we reorganized ourselves around this bottoms-up product qualified model that we talked about earlier. I'm going to go into that extensively. We also had the luck or blessing to have lots of great analytics and data science expertise, because that's what we do. So we formalized that function and created an analytics and data science team in marketing. Our product team made really radical changes. We had to create a new pricing and packaging model that would work with a bottoms-up PQL product-led growth effort, which I'll talk about. And we also made some investments in the product that we knew would support this funnel, in-product notifications, referrals, data, et cetera. And then lastly, we built out an education and community team. Again, I'll talk about that extensively. But going through this exercise, this 3-month exercise, as painful as it was for us to push the pause button and for us to sort of take a step back, some really amazing things happened as a result. First, we aligned the entire organization around product-led growth. This, of course, sounds simple, but getting an organization of lots of different experiences and backgrounds to believe that we can hit our growth targets by starting with the people that use our product and not the CEO, the CAO, the CIO, not starting top down, but starting bottom up. That was a hard sales job for me and my team members to make. And we did it, and it was really powerful. We did it, and the reason this was successful is because we really doubled down on one core user persona. As we saw earlier in the Martin Casado tweets, it's really hard to do both as a startup, and we were targeting everybody from this hardcore data science user persona to the CEO of a financial services company, and that's really hard for us to do. So we decided that to get to where we needed to be, we're going to focus just on one persona, and I'll talk about that. We also uncovered our flywheel, and I think this is something that Brian Halligan of HubSpot also talks a lot about recently, but it's this idea that, for us to grow, we had to find a way that we could grow effectively, and a flywheel is great because the more you put into it, the faster it goes, and I'll talk about this in great detail, but we found one through this 3-month sprint process. It let us simplify our product roadmap, so our engineering team no longer had to worry about the dilution of having to think about users versus executives and all the things that happen when you target a real broad group of personas. So our product roadmap was really oriented around how we made that one persona successful. And the net result is almost immediately, certainly within the first couple of quarters, we dramatically started to improve our unit economics. we found that we could achieve the same types of objectives we were hoping for with a much larger, dual focused enterprise, mid-market, top down, bottoms up sales team through our bottoms up funnel. So we dramatically lowered our CAC, we improved LTV, which drove higher DRR, all the marketing metrics got better. So it was a huge win, purely from a unit economic perspective. And it didn't deviate from what we had tried to do with our Series C thesis. We were still selling our platform into specific use cases in large enterprises. We were just doing it bottoms up. And that was a huge win for us. So what I'd like to do now is tell you some of the specific lessons that we learned during this process. It certainly wasn't easy. It's always easy to talk about it with bullet points on a slide, but an amazing amount of blood, sweat, and tears went into making these things happen. And the first lesson is forget smarketing. Smarketing is something HubSpot, I keep saying them a lot. I'm here in Boston as they are, but smarketing is something that HubSpot talks a lot about. Sales and marketing alignment, obviously a great objective, but sales and marketing alignment creates problems. In fact, sales and marketing alignment was one of the things that caused us to struggle, back before we hit the pause button, because sales and marketing were targeting a different type of customer, a different type of buyer than the product team was building for. So on the left here, if you have just sales and marketing alignment, your VP or your CPO, your head of product is going to say, they bought what? What did they buy? What did you sell them? And that's sort of where we ran into. We were selling at such a different level in the organization that we became disconnected from really where the product strengths were. And and then you can make that same argument whether it's you have sales and product alignment or marketing and product, whatever. But you really have to align the entire organization if you're going to make product-led growth work. The persona that we doubled down on was our core user persona called Statistical Steven. So this is the person that will download our product, use our product. It's somebody who has a very specific set of needs that our product is a great fit for. And by deciding that we were going to go focus on the Statistical Steven persona, we stopped paying this enormous optionality tax. We stopped paying this huge tax that we were paying by trying to be multiple companies to the different types of organizations that we were trying to sell to. Instead, we were able to say, no matter whether we go in at the largest companies in the world or not, by focusing on Statistical Steven and the needs of Statistical Steven, we can align sales, marketing, product. We can make sure that G&A and finance were able to fund the investments need to make to focus on that product, and it made our job that much easier. Next lesson about finding our flywheel, and this is really important for us. So the idea of a flywheel is that if, we said earlier, the more you put in at certain leverage points in the flywheel, it goes faster. So our flywheel was a no-cost acquisition flywheel that resulted in us providing a product that delighted our users, that then resulted in great word of mouth that would then fuel our no-cost acquisition funnel. Sounds great, but how did we do it? So the problem that we run into is we're in a super competitive market, right? So data science, machine learning, this is one of the most competitive markets. It's where it's one of potentially the most transformative things happening in business right now. But in this market, we're competing against billion-dollar companies like SAS and IBM who've been around for centuries. We're also competing against super well-funded startups who've raised at least 5x more VC than us. So spending our way into growth wasn't an option. We had to find another way. And this was really evident to us. I mean, as we saw our competitors raise 50, 60, 70, $80 million VC rounds and hire huge SDR teams and do a tremendous amount of outbound, that just wasn't going to be our play. So we had to sort of put our brains down and figure out something else was going to work for us. And this is one of the things that we found, and maybe it's unique to RapidMiner, but just think about these flywheels in your business. And our flywheel was our academic community. So as we looked at our data, we always knew that we had lots of academic users of RapidMiner, but I think we underestimated. In fact, when we looked at the data that we had, we found over 4,000 universities and over 150 companies used RapidMiner. And that if you look at our monthly active users, well over 50% of our monthly active users in any month were academics. And you could look at, certain times of the year when new semesters would start, we could see registrations, 30, 40, 50, 60 users at the time using our product. And this is, what a great privilege it is for us to be able to have all of these people use our product without having to spend a dollar on user acquisition to make that happen. And it was intentional. We created an academic program. We give academic users a free license to our product, but it wasn't something that we made a priority. And the big thing, because students eventually graduate, and as we were going through our sprints, one of the things we wanted to prove out was that there is a connection between academic users and our commercial funnel. And it's hard. This is a data problem because you would register with RapidMiner with your EDU email address, and then you might come back, 3 years later when you get a job with your corporate address. And this is just one random person I picked out yesterday in our database to illustrate the point. But here's someone who's now, on the Alexa team at Amazon, who started back in 2015 as a RapidMiner user in school. And this person still has RapidMiner on their LinkedIn profile. So, we thought this is a great way for us to build a sustainable acquisition model, that we can differentiate ourselves with over time. And this is hard. It's easy to spend more money. It's hard to make the kind of long-term commitment to an academic funnel that we don't directly monetize, yet we know over a period of time, all of the users who fall in love with RapidMiner in school are going to bring it with them. And the way that we made our users fall in love with RapidMiner was the part of our flywheel where we talk about delighting users. And when most product-led organizations think about delighting users, they think about the user experience of the product. They think about the product onboarding experience and all the things that the product can do. But I'm here to tell you that for us, we found it was actually people that played a huge role in improving the experience and the delighting of our users. And the two big investments we made were in our community. So the RapidMiner community is a portal that we've created where RapidMiner users can come to network with each other, answer questions, get best practices. It's the largest vendor community in the data science space easily. We also invested in chat. In particular, we use Drift, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later. But we found that people would come to our site, ask questions, and that if we did those things through our community and through chat, users that interacted with us through those channels had a much higher likelihood of being retained users. So it was a super valuable investment in continuing to fuel the flywheel. And this is something that didn't scale. I think this is, we think again about product, and we think about product-led things and how engineering can solve problems, but these are problems solved by people. So I actually put two people here that play a huge role in touching thousands of users. Scott is somebody we hired and recruited from our community. He was one of our more passionate community members, and we hired Scott to own the community effort. And by doing that, Scott was able to single-handedly improve our retention rates of our users by double-digit percentage points. On the chat side, we have co-ops. Every 6 months, we hire a co-op from Northeastern University. Here's one of them, Caroline. And we have them literally sit all day on chat on our website, helping our users. We don't care whether you're the chief data science officer at Bank of America, or whether you're a sophomore at University of Lowell in Lowell, Massachusetts. Doesn't matter to us. We ask Caroline to make sure that everybody has a positive experience, and that's a hard job, and it certainly doesn't scale. But by doing this, we can very clearly demonstrate that we've fueled our flywheel successfully. And the way we can demonstrate that is through the sort of the peer reviews that we receive in G2 Crowd and Gartner Peer Insights. So we recognize that one of the most important things that we can do, and obviously back to the Tesla and Volvo story, how people are changing the way they purchase. Obviously today, people trust their peers much more than they trust marketing from vendors. So we made some big bets in G2 Crowd and then later Gartner Peer Insights. And all we did was ask our happy users to write a review. And we did it at such a scale, and because we have such a great, engaged, loyal community, that we literally dominated both G2 Crowd and Gartner Peer Insights. So still today, we are by far the highest rated data science platform on G2 Crowd in their predictive analytics category, well over our top two competitors, IBM and SAS. Gartner Peer Insights, which is really important for us in the enterprise, we were one of 3 vendors to win their Customer Choice Award, which is really cool. And all this was about making people happy. We didn't have to spend money. We didn't have to run campaigns. We just literally had to say, hey, if you love the product, it would really help us out. And here's when you know why when your flywheel is working. I found this just yesterday. And if you look closely, as you can see my face here, I think, you may see a tear form up. I'm not going to, confirm it if it happens, but it certainly made me tear up yesterday. This is Rodrigo, who's, one of our community members in Chile. And I had the chance to meet Rodrigo at our customer conference recently, but just both RapidMiner as a company and the community behind it embraced me, gave me a new direction towards the future. I can't even begin to describe how you contributed to my entire life. This is the kind of, I think, a testament to, we have a higher mission than generating leads and generating PQLs. And if you do these things right, yes, you can generate leads and PQLs and all the things that fund your business, but we're doing something maybe even more important than that. And we talk about our flywheel. It's not the most measurable flywheel. As a CMO, I was a former mathematics computer science major. It pains me deeply that I can't prove mathematically that everybody who says nice things like Rodrigo results in new ACV for RapidMiner. But I also know Occam's razor that sometimes the simplest explanation is the right explanation. And it's hard for me to believe that when someone like Rodrigo is so passionately advocating our product, that good things aren't going to happen as a result. And I know that to be the case with Rodrigo, and I would bet my reputation that it's the case for the rest of our funnel. So that was about our flywheel, a really important realization for us, and something that we invested dollars in, and I'll talk about in a second. And that's when I talk about optimizing the right levers. So here's a state diagram of the flow of our PQL funnel, which I'll talk more about in the next section. So, our funnel is basically you register, become a user. When you confirm your account, you become a new user. And as a new user, you can either continue to use the product and become retained, or you can stop using your product after a month, right? So it's a basic state diagram. And let's say your CEO or your board says, hey, let's grow faster. So, where are you going to put your dollars? Where are you going to put your investments? And, marketing, this is, as a CMO, our natural inclination, our natural answer to every question is, let's spend more, let's run more programs, let's widen the top of the funnel, let's buy more Facebook ads. If we were asked to solve the problem of how do we get more new users, it's going to be some flavor of let's spend more. Well, what if I told you that, in one of those big parts of your state diagram, in fact, the part between new user and retained user, what if I told you that after 6 weeks, almost all of those users, or a huge chunk of them, are going to go away? So here's an example of the survival curve that we had in the project, the Epsilon next time frame back when we hit the pause button. When we looked at the data, it was pretty clear to us, we had a massive opportunity to improve the health of our funnel by looking at user retention. So if you look at the drop between week 1 and week 2, this is a dramatic drop, right? So this is something that we had to really figure out, or we were going to end up just, churning through a bunch of new users who used our product. But of course, you get back to marketing and say, how do you fix that? Well, if you got low conversion, buy more, drive more to the top of the funnel, buy more Facebook ads, right? But that's the wrong answer, of course. And, I think a mentality that says, and I'm speaking in this case as a marketer, as a CMO, a mentality that's like spending more on marketing budget on user acquisition versus allocating marketing budget to fuel the flywheel. And in our case, it was about allocating budget to specific initiatives that would help us improve user retention. And it turns out those initiatives had nothing to do with what you would classically call marketing. It was not about acquiring more users. It was about making product investments. It was about hiring documentation resources because our documentation wasn't great. It was about investing in training and community and all the things that would make our users more educated. It had nothing to do with marketing budget. But we took marketing budget and allocated it elsewhere. And that's, I think, the key lesson here, and something that as a CMO and anybody else here who's in marketing, I strongly encourage you to think about. For the longest time in marketing, we've often sort of evaluated our self-worth by how big our budget is. And it almost has become a territorial, one of those issues where it's my budget, I'll decide what I do. And I think it's time for us to think differently, especially in a product-led growth mindset. We've got to think about brain power over budget, and we've got to think, that event that we could go do that costs $100,000, or that ABM campaign that we could run, is that really a better lever for us to invest in, relative to the impact it can deliver? And it isn't, your net worth isn't decided by the size of your budget. It's by the impact that you can create. And it was funny, even as, I would have to fight with other members of my team every time I would offer to give budget away to product, engineering, docs, whatever. And someone else would come and say, hey, shouldn't we drive the funnel more? I'm like, no, we shouldn't drive the funnel more. We need to solve this other more important part of our problem. If it takes marketing budget to do that, so be it. And I'll scale with brain power over budget any day. All right, the last part of the lesson I want to teach is about MQLs and PQLs and something I actually wrote a post about back in the same era, why I'm killing the marketing qualified lead. This is absolutely 100% a clickbait title. I certainly wouldn't advocate that most people kill the idea of a marketing qualified lead. But for us, the marketing qualified lead was one of the main issues we were running into. It's super easy to qualify a marketing lead. It's a company that we can sell to. It's the right level of persona. They downloaded a white paper. They watched a webinar, whatever. But the queue and qualified, at least for RapidMiner, wasn't working very well. And again, when I looked at the queue, I thought that the queue makes sense, but product qualified in a bottoms-up model is obviously much more relevant than marketing qualified. So we really, became inspired by HubSpot's work, and we rolled out, we tried to replicate, and this is sort of the seminal, piece they put together when I first researched it, and, talking about the different conversion points you might have in a PQL flow. And we tried that, but our experience was a little bit different. So when we did our product and packaging changes in our Sprint Epsilon Next project, we put in a new feature limit. And it turns out for us that our feature limit didn't convert as well as we'd hoped. It didn't convert as well as it did for HubSpot. It still converted better than our historical sort of fluffy marketing qualified leads. But what really converted better for us were these hand-raised PQLs, basically people that said, I need some help. And the people that said they needed some help converted 5x more than our MQLs. Now, the HubSpot model also talks about touchless purchase. We do have some touchless purchases, but again, we're focused on larger enterprise type transactions. It happens, but not a focus for us. But the clear takeaway for us is that hand-raised PQLs, people that ask for help in a product qualified lead funnel, convert a lot better. So what does that mean? Well, we talked about building a touch model. Enterprise sales is high touch. Some of the modern SaaS companies are low or no touch, like Atlassian. In fact, by looking at Atlassian, we were inspired by them to think of this as a smart touch process. So it's the aggregate of all the touches that are going to be what lets us convert users more efficiently. And product plays a role in smart touch, specifically product and onboarding. Marketing plays a role in smart touch, specifically getting educational materials in front of new users and then engaging them over a period of time with relevant resources. Our BDR team, which we put in place as a part of this Epsilon Next project, plays a huge role, and I'll talk about this in a couple of slides, to assist and qualify users with a human touch point. But then this is where it really gets interesting. We have a team of expert data scientists, people that have been working data scientists in their career. And one of our highest value touch points that we can provide that adds a tremendous amount of value to our users is by letting our brand new users engage with one of our super experienced expert data scientists with help around their specific problem. So for the right qualified users, we get attached this incredibly high value resource to them. And our sales team, it's interesting, our sales team who in our enterprise top-down model, had to do really hard challenger selling methodology stuff that requires lots of resources. I almost think of them now more as a buying concierge. It's not always this way, but by the time that our sales team gets engaged with users, it's really more about helping them sell the value of RapidMiner internally, helping them navigate their own internal buying processes, helping them understand configurations, putting them in touch with other users like them. It was much less of a selling process and much more of a concierge-like process. And of course, our CSM post-sale touch point was about helping our customers get to the business outcomes they were hoping to achieve. But what all of this had in common, and the reason that it worked for us, is that it's all about the user and not us. Every single touch in that smart touch process was all about helping make our users wildly successful. And that's why it worked. And that translates into a funnel. At the end of the day, it is about a funnel, MQL, PQL, whatever. Here's how we view our PQL funnel at RapidMiner. In the green, you can see from a user perspective what it looks like, and on the right is what it translates into in our Salesforce world. So the first step for a user is they've got to download and use our product, right? So they come to our website, download our product, become a registered user. A product qualified lead for us, and this definition is going to be different for everybody, but it's a registered user who matches the personas that we target, who's in a vertical that we have explicit focus on, and it's somebody who has been scored by our onboarding progress. So as I mentioned earlier, we have an analytics and data science team, and we've used predictive analytics in order to put someone into a bucket 1 to 4 based on where they are in their journey with RapidMiner. Now, we still follow up with everybody, but we have a different approach based on where we see them, whether they haven't even used the product at all, or whether they've gone through everything. So PQL is sort of the unit of work. Our BDR teams are the ones qualifying PQLs. And when they qualify PQL, they create it as a sales qualified opportunity that moves into sort of a traditional sales funnel at that point. So PQLs for us were really about, and we were aggressive about this. We no longer passed any leads to anyone else. We turned off all the forms on our website. We just focused on getting as many registered users as possible and then identifying those who were ready to have that BDR conversation. And the reason we're able to do this is because we have a really great way to capture data. This is something that was, we were really ahead of any other company I've ever worked at. So when you download our product, we're desktop software. So like Slack, you literally download RapidMiner Studio and run it on your PC or Windows or Mac machine. But we still send product events back to a data warehouse that we've created. That data warehouse feeds Salesforce and Pardot. That data warehouse is leveraging third-party tools like Clearbit to bring in more data. But we have a really detailed record for everybody that uses our product. And that detailed record is what lets our BDR team do what I call extreme real-time personalization. So not only are we able to reach out to you at the different moments where we think we can offer the most value, but because we have such a detailed picture of what you're doing with our product, we can send you very specific resources, very specific next steps that we know are going to be interesting to you, ranging from lightweight things like, here's documentation that you're going to need, here's a webinar that explains the particular data science problem you're trying to solve, all the way through, you're an expert, so sending you a webinar is not going to help you, but getting you on one of our one-on-one workshops with one of our data science consultants is something that you're going to find incredibly valuable therefore you're likely to respond to that outreach from our BDRs. So because we have this extraordinarily detailed record of not only what someone does, but exactly when they do it, our BDRs can be extremely helpful and extremely helpful in near real time. And maybe our biggest secret weapon in this whole process, what we uncovered early on of the Epsilon Next experience, was that if we're going to go down a PQL path, people are going to ask for help, right? People are going to come to our website and they're going to want help from RapidMiner. And I remember still vividly the first time I saw Drift and the first time I saw that there were these things called bots that we could employ that would let us ask a few questions, sort of segment users in a very high level way so that we could uncover quickly. We get hundreds of conversations a day, but there are a handful where we wanna really invest our time in helping that user. Our BDRs who sit on Drift and our conversation marketing specialists we saw earlier, we had, everyone who came to our site, we were able to really scale helpfulness at a level that wouldn't have been possible otherwise. So all the academic users who fuel our flywheel, we're giving them a great experience. And for those prospects who are the PQL match for us and they're coming to our site and asking questions, the minute we offer them help, we are passively qualifying them and we're able to offer them those extreme real-time personalization resources I talked about earlier. And we're able to do it while they're on our website. And it's been really, and it continues to be, the most effective thing that we do in marketing for sure is being responsive to everyone, but really helping our team invest their time and effort where we think it's going to get us the biggest impact, specifically to the enterprise transactions that we're trying to help create. So a summary of this lesson is, first, don't underestimate the importance of your business model. Yeah, differentiate in brand, product, price, but business model is great. And something, if Tesla can offer a free trial, you can too. And make sure you don't underestimate that. Second lesson is align everybody. Forget about sales and marketing alignment. You really have to be aligned across the entire organization. And I bet you aren't today. Go ask your engineering colleagues, your product management colleagues, your G&A colleagues, where do we focus? Who do we sell to? What's our value prop? It's going to be all over the map. And I think there's so much leverage from getting everyone on the same page. Third advice, of course, we talked about this, create flywheels, not funnels. Don't be afraid of playing the long game. Don't force yourself to think about short-term thinking. How do I hit next month's MQL goal? How do I get this many leads this month? Yeah, sure, think about those things, but don't do it at the expense of making investments that over time become flywheels for you. And these are often investments that just don't pay off in 1 quarter or 2 quarters or maybe even years. Optimize the right levers, right? So don't hold on to budgets. You don't have a marketing budget if you're a CMO. You have a growth budget. You have a company budget, and don't be afraid of putting your dollars where you're going to see the best leverage and best impact. And then lastly, back to the original topic of this presentation, we were able to build at RapidMiner. We were able to embrace the sort of organic funnel and growth model we had created and still get to the objective that we had hoped to get to with our Series C raise, which was, how do we really leverage our ability to go and find large ACV deals in big enterprises? We were just able to do it with a product growth model that let us shorten our sales cycles, that let us dramatically lower our CAC, that still outputted a great LTV and DRR and all the unit economics that investors look at. We just did it, we think, in a more clever way, in a way that we could embrace better with our company DNA. And something that I now personally believe is the kind of business model that I get really fired up about building as a CMO. So with that, I want to thank you all for watching, those of you that stayed with me. And if you'd like to reach out, just hit me up at T Wentworth12 on Twitter. Thank you so much.